Hi, my name is Danielle Pettiti, and my case is called Materials Making a Manuscript. In creating this case, I wanted to explore the various materials and techniques used to produce the lavishly illuminated manuscripts of the Middle Ages. And so in setting up the case, I wanted to arrange all the objects chronologically in the process of making the manuscript, and that the scribe and the illuminator would actually go through. So in the front left of the case, we have the writing stage, where the scribe would use parchment from the skin of an animal and a quill pen to write the text. He would begin by ruling out the lines of the leaf, as you can faintly see in the Book of Hours leaf that we have in the case, as a reference point for all of the ways that the materials can be applied to the text. So following the writing stage, we have the illumination stage, which takes up the majority of the case. And illumination refers to the silver and gold and colored paints used to embellish the manuscripts. It's said that, like, as you would flip through them, they would light up the page. So right over here we have our very delicate gold leaf, which is, I think, definitely a struggle to figure out how we could get it in the case. That was definitely a challenge we faced. But first, the illuminator would apply a gold leaf mixed with a sticky substance used to adhere the surface of the parchment to the gold leaf. And then following that, the illuminator would use some sort of burnisher to create a polish or a shiny finish. And typically in the medieval period, they would use a dog's tooth, but we don't have that. In modern times, they use an agate burnisher, which is in our case. And then following that, the scribe would use different colored paints made from a variety of coloring pigments, such as as you can see in the case, we have our mineral pigments, earth, chemically produced, and organic pigments. And they all created a variety of effects on the page. The brighter ones were typically chemically produced, like our vermilion, our red vermilion, which is, you can see in our tiny test tube. And an example of an organic pigment is the grapevine charcoal, which was actually grapevine, which they would burn down, and it would create a powdered charcoal color. And then the pigments were actually mixed with, you probably are confused as to why there's an eggshell in our case, but they were mixed with the egg whites from an egg to create kind of a tempera, which is a paint that was commonly used in the Middle Ages and in the Renaissance. And then finally, after the paints were applied, the illuminator would apply a shell gold, which its name is actually derived from the fact that it was stored in a mollusk shell, which we have so cleverly put in a mussel shell in the case. And then finally, we have our Book of Hours, our 15th century Book of Hours leaf from Paris, which actually is one thing that I love about it is that it has a mistake in, the scribe made an error, or the illuminator, I should say, made an error in the initials, and instead of putting an L for laudateum, they accidentally put an S, and he didn't go back and change it or even attempt to change it. But mistakes were very common in Books of Hours, which were the most popular books in the 15th century, especially in Paris, because there were so many books were produced that they didn't really have time to go back and change. But yeah, so I guess one challenge that I faced, or that I came across in making this case, and I know Professor Moodey can attest to this, is finding materials that seem medieval, modern materials that seem medieval, and we had to actually cut a lot of objects out of our case, of my case. But for instance, we were supposed to have a paintbrush and a knife, a scalpel, which was used to wipe off the errors or scrape off the errors that the scribe would make, but all the knives that we found were way too modern looking. So And then that's actually something, a big thanks to Professor Moodey for finding the glasses. She actually got them made and shipped over to us, and then popped in lenses. And she's very, very crafty and creative. And also in other solutions, like creating big things to Miss Walker for bringing her brown eggs as opposed to the stark white eggs that we had earlier. But that was definitely a struggle, was finding things like the test tubes, which might look too sciencey, and making them look more medieval. I guess what I learned that I loved about my objects was, specifically, I loved creating the catalog entry on the Book of Hours leaves, which is in the interactive. But I loved decoding it was kind of like, it's like solving a puzzle. Literally, I would spending hours and hours trying to figure out what the content of the leaf is, and trying to find its provenance, where its origins are from, if it's what century, what country, what city, and using things such as the text, the script, the various illuminations as hints to finding out where it was from and its history. So that's all. Thank you.